Hello. Thank you for your interest in effective transport. Colleen and Robert will be talking about and demonstrating effective transport functionality. Colleen is a senior consultant and developer for Effect Tech. Colleen, let's get started.
Thanks, Stacy, and thanks again to everyone for your time and your interest in our presentation. As Stacy said, I'm going to be giving a brief presentation, and then I'm going to skip to the I'm going to jump into the demo where you're going to see the tool, the effective transport tool in action. I'll start by telling you a little bit about Effective Technologies. We're a company that provides data onboarding solutions and professional services, and we make your ITSM or SRM implementations go faster. Our tools and our best practices assist you with maintenance issues, with getting onboarding done faster, and reducing the time and effort to do your day-to-day things within ITSM or Remedy or CMDB. Our background is largely around consulting projects, and we were involved in some of the earliest ITSM 7 consulting projects, and as part of that, we learned firsthand about some of the pain points that have to do with onboarding your data over the course of your project. In some of the early implementations, of course, we didn't have the data management tool, and that was when our tool, the transport tool, was born. And over time, we've developed the tool out so it has some capabilities that we think are superior and that really benefit you in your both your onboarding, your initial onboarding efforts, and in your maintenance over time. So these are some of the particular pain points that we address with transport. The BMC data collection workbooks are confusing, and they can be there's lots of tabs, and they can be confusing and difficult to use. They require that you understand the Untitled for the foundation data. If you experience data errors, there's issues with trying to get even the data that is okay in, and not all the data validation is done great. It's difficult to make updates or back out any changes that you made. We find that when we use our tool, one of the big pain points that we don't come across is this data between your development, your QA, and production environments. And so we're looking to have consistent data across all environments. And the transport tool is also looking to assist you when you're having to manage multiple onboarding efforts, which is a big issue for our managed service providers. So the transport tool is really what we think of as the next generation, or the better way of doing data onboarding. So the let's see. Let's just skip that step. Okay. So this slide is a bit of an architecture slide, and it's meant to show you that transport sits outside of the basic ITSM application. So it's a pure Remedy application, and it is layered on top of the ITSM or SRM applications. So the implications here is that you don't have an issue on upgrade. If you go ahead and upgrade your ITSM 7, transport has not gone in and made fixes or changes to the ITSM workflow, and so it does not cause you any issue on upgrade. This is a list of the key features. I'm going to actually do a slide for each of these features, so I'll give you a minute to sort of scan that slide, but rather than go through these one by one, we'll go as we do the subsequent slides. Okay, so the first key on onboarding governance, and we do this with something that we call the projects console. So this is really part of our solution is really part tool and part best practices, and this is where the tool is kind of trying to put you in the direction of best practices. So we give you we'll see this in the demo, but we give you the ability to have sort of a big picture overview of how the data management portion of your project is going. So it's about, you know, how far along are you in dev or QA, or how far along are you with the CMDB data loads versus how far along are you with your people data loads, etc. We have much simpler workbooks than the ones that are used for the data management tool. So you can see on the top of the slide here is an example of how you get your location data into ITSM using the data management tool, and you see there's something like 5 separate tabs there. And as I said before, it really requires that you understand the underlying data model, that you have to build not only a site entry, but you also have to build a site to company association entry. None of this is necessary with transport. If you look at the transport data load sheet down below, you see you have region, we have site group if necessary, we have site, city, state, and it's just one tab, one single tab, and we'll load that in our staging forms. We'll figure out what are all the subsequent bits of data that need to be created for you. So simplified data collection to the point where we can give our spreadsheets to the business and let them fill out the data for us if we want to. The tool has been used primarily for iterative data load. So we do not, within our implementations, expect to load the data in one time and then be done. We assume that we're going to have to load and reload all different flavors of the data. So the tool is designed very much with that in mind, and it facilitates our best practices to do it that way. Big advantage in being able to get a lot of data in early. So when you're out there demoing to your customers, or and you're trying to give them solutions going to look like, you have real data in the system. You can create instances, you can create changes, you can see the site and organizational data. So transport is meant to be run repeatedly over and over the course of your project. Or, of course, this again lends itself to maintenance. So because you can use transport repeatedly, you can use it to add new permissions to people or move support group people from one place to another, etc. Specifically, we are targeting making it easier to do both initial implementation and maintenance on your people and support staff data. So this is an area that's very click-intensive in the product itself. It requires a lot of effort to do something as basic as giving somebody, 4 or 5 permissions and putting them in 2 support groups and giving them appropriate functional roles, and we wanted to make it really easy. It's difficult to do from a manual perspective, and it's difficult to do with the very large and complicated spreadsheet that you would do it with the data management tool. It's really, really easy to do with transport. And I alluded to this when we talked about the pain points, but another area that really I consider to be a potential project killer is that your data is completely out of sync in your different environments. So it's all fine and good to get your data good enough in QA to pass QA, but if you move then from there, say, into a user acceptance environment or to your production environment, and all of a sudden nothing works, tickets aren't getting assigned properly, people don't have the appropriate permissions, that can cause your go-live date to just go just go push way, way out because you haven't managed to keep your data in sync between the different environments. So between the tool and the best practices, we are very successful at doing that, and we make it really easy. We had originally, the transport tool was developed primarily for foundation data. We have since then added in other capabilities, including both SRM and CMDB. The SRM data is a big win because, again, it's another click-intensive, rather complicated, complex process to build your SRDs. So frequently you're having to put in new people permissions and new support groups. You're building potentially new product categories, operational categories, and assignment rules before you even get to the point where you're going to build your incident templates, change templates, task group templates, task templates, then your application object templates and your process definition templates, your service request definition. So all of these building blocks for the SRDs, service request definitions, can be done using our spreadsheets, using our tool, where the data comes into staging forms and gets pushed into the appropriate forms for SRM. It's a really quick, much faster way of deploying a catalog, especially once you've got your catalog built and you need to deploy it move it, say, from your dev environment to your QA or your production environment, whereas the BMC import-export can be both a little bit flaky and also it's incomplete, so it's not going to get all the pieces. With the transport tool, you can actually get every little bit and piece and move it from one server to another if you want with the click of a single button or schedule it to be done. And we'll see this in the demo. Okay, there's some other strengths of transport that we have. We have the ability to, as I made a mention of, we have certain CMDB data that we can onboard. We have the transport tool really provides you with a ready framework. So similar to the data management tool, what our tool will do is it allows you to take data from an external source, usually a CSV file, move it from there into a staging form, and then from the staging form into the application form. And if you find that you need to do that with some sort of custom data, or if you have another external data source, such as SAP data or PeopleSoft data or something like that, where you need the data to come in, you can move it in through, by moving it through our staging forms, you get a bunch of the work that gets it to the right place is sort of provided for free. So it's really a framework that you can extend to load all different kinds of data into related forms or into custom forms even if you want to. And then we are working on a release. It's currently actually in limited release right now, where we're allowing you to load service level management data, including things like service targets. Again, we're really excited about this because being able to load those out of CSV files, it's going to make it much easier to propagate your SLAs from your dev file or your dev system to your QA system to your prod system. And I think that puts us at the point where we're ready for the demo. So what hopefully the plan here is that we're going to see in the demo the things that we just talked about. Okay, so what we're looking at, if I were to go to the Remedy homepage, there's three, but we're going to talk primarily about two of them. There's the two main entry points to the projects console and the onboarding console. So we'll look very quickly at the projects console. And I would pick for a given customer what is going on with this particular customer's projects. So we like to about the fact that we're not out to try to replace your Microsoft project plan. We're envisioning that over the course of a project, there's a project manager who's managing the Microsoft project plan for the whole project, but this view is really about how are you going to, where are you as far as just the data management, the data portion of your project. So you can, the projects, these here are projects, and within each project has a estimated amount of time. And depending on whether or not you want to use this feature, so it's optional. If you don't want to have this extra sort of compliance oversight thing in place, you can actually just bypass all of this. But if you do want to be able to track this and maybe use this as a snapshot, screenshot for your, when you're reporting up to your management where we are, you have the ability to define your projects and your activities. It's entirely data-driven. So you might define it the way we see it here, where you have, ITSM tasks and CMDB tasks and maybe ProdCat tasks all separated out. But you could also have, for example, one line that's your development environment, one line that's your one project that is managing your QA one. So you could see that development is 80% of the way along, but QA is only 30% of the way along, and production is 0% of the way along. So it's just a pictorial view of what's going on with your projects. And it also gets to the fact that as you do your data loading, that whether or not you want to use the activities, and we'll see this in a minute, is optional. But regardless of whether you use this, anything that you do in terms of data loading is logged. So there's a journal entry created where it knows who loaded the data, what forms they loaded it to, how many entries they attempted to load, how many were successful, and how many failed. Where, when is another really useful feature that we think of as part of our best practices and tool kind of working together. Okay, so that's the project console. The other console is the onboarding console, and this is really the console where if you're the person who's responsible for getting the data into the system, this is where you're going to be spending all your time. This is sort of where you live and breathe. Over here is where we just saw the project console. I would pick whatever project it is I happen to be working on, and as I select activities here, when I do my data loading activities and log the time, you will see the lines change over on the projects console. That's how the two are tied together. So what we have is something that we call a data link. So we have 4 different categories, soon to be 5, because there will be SLM data here shortly. 5 sort of broad categories of data. Then within each of these, we have what we call a data link for each type of data. So you can see that we have the sort of obvious ones, support group and OpCats and ProdCats, et cetera, but we also have the ability to load in task templates, task group templates, and all those kinds of things. I'm going to, rather than go through each of these or walk through how we would load every kind of data, we're going to be a little more expedient. We're going to skip up to where we're loading the people data. Now, before we do this, I want to show you the, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to show you the company record for Effective Technology. So this is the company for whom we're going to load the data. And the company record does already exist. But other than that, it's pretty sparse. So we haven't loaded any location in. We haven't loaded any organizations in. And if we look at the people data, we have just this one person, the person that I'm using to load the data. So the company information is looking pretty empty there. Coming back to here, we're back on the onboarding console. Normally, if I wanted to load in my people data, I would not be able to do it at this point because I haven't done my due diligence and actually loaded in all the supporting people data, such as location data, organizational data, and things like that. So what we're looking at down below here, that's the set of staged data. This is the set of data that happened last time I did a people load. So I'm going to clear that out. And I'm going to go ahead and load in the people data that I have out here, remembering that I don't have the supporting data. So Transport has an option where it's going to auto-create the supporting data that it needs. So the benefit to this is that it gets your system up and running to a point where you can start submitting incidents using real people data and demo it for your customer sooner rather than later. And the sooner you get your data in, the better it is for your project. Now, of course, if you're loading in the data like this, and depending on what the source of the data is, you may end up with some dirty data because you might have locations that really shouldn't be in there. So we give you some tools. One of them is called transformation mapping. We give you the ability to turn off the auto-create so that it will stop auto-creating and it will error out. So this is what it looks like when somebody errors out. Now, because we have auto-create, we know we're erroring out for a different reason. In this case, it's because we haven't provided them with the Revity login, which is the unique key. If we drill down into that entry, we would see exactly why. Notice that all the other people data did get loaded, though, just because this one entry was not able to get in. We still went ahead and loaded all the rest of them. So the people data, okay, it just got in. And I'm going to go back and look. Remember, we looked at this company before. Now, if I refresh this, you'll see all the people are there. We'll notice that all of them are loaded in as not support staff. If I go over here to the location data, though, I'm going to see that, sure enough, my locations got created in order to facilitate getting the people records created. If you don't have site data, you can't create people data. Site is a required field. And the organizations also got auto-created along the way. So this is a big benefit of Transport, especially when you're trying to get your people data. And the other way in which this is really useful is if you have people data that, say, comes from an LDAP data source on a regular basis, you can schedule it to come in nightly. But a lot of times the fields in LDAP are not well formed, and you can get garbage data. Do you really want the people entries to be stuck and unable to get an error on the side of get the people entry in and clean up the location data later? And this works really well for that. Okay, so if we go back, we did notice that looking at this person's people data again, remember I said everyone is loaded as non-support staff. Also notice that the phone number doesn't appear to have gotten in. So we throw the data back to our business analyst, and we say somehow the phone numbers didn't get filled in. Can you go back and fill that in for me? And then if we come back, I'm going to clear the staging data, and I'm going to run. They've given me an updated file, and I'm going to go ahead and load that data in. So this is really a repeat load of the same data, but it has cleaned up the error message, and it has the phone number data in it. So this is really meant to demonstrate. Remember how we talked about how the process is iterative, and we don't really expect people you to get your people data right the first time. And we would like to avoid, if you're somewhere halfway down the path to go live, the situation where you have to delete out all your people data and lose whatever you have in there in terms of all the updates that have been made. So this is taking a minute because it's loading a lot of data. We'll give it just a minute. We're also working on a pretty small VMware. And then we're going to go back and look at the people data again. I think I might have the file name wrong there. So this is good. This is telling me that it successfully imported 0 and it failed to import 0. And the reason is because if I go down here a little, it's going to tell me it did not find the file name. It's telling me the file's missing. So that tells me that I have the wrong file name. So if you give me just 1 minute, I'll figure out the right file name. I'm looking at the server. This is the data, and the file name I need is, I thought I had it right. Okay, that's the file name that has my updated data. So, it looks right, doesn't it? I'm going to try again to load the data. I may have had a funny character in there or a blank or something. We'll see. So what we would expect this time, again, as I was saying, is that we expect to see the phone number data updated. Okay, while we're waiting for that, we'll go over here and look. I'll talk a little bit about, remember we said that we loaded in all the support staff people with the support staff value of no. So our best practice is to just bring in all of your people data and then layer permissions on top. And we have something called a people profile that's going to allow you to do that. So rather than asking our business analysts, who's a change super user, or rather, who needs these 5 permissions and which of these functional roles do they want and what support groups are they in? Profiles. And we say we have a profile that's called something like a change super user, and that's going to encompass all the permissions and the support groups and the functional roles and everything they need to be a change super user. Okay, so if I go over here, I see this data processed again. This time I had an error here, and it's missing, and it's gone now. And if I go over here and I refresh this table, we see that all the people's data came in with phone numbers, and we have that person that was missing last time. So that's good. And so now we're going to drill down into one of these people entries. And what we'll see is, as I said, he's not a support staff. He's got very limited permissions. He's got a read license. He's got no company access, etc. No support groups and no functional roles. But now I'm going to apply what we call profiles to this set of people, and we're going to see that some of the people will become support staff. So to do that, it's a different data link, and it's a very simple data link. Rather than, again, I'm going to clear out the staging data from the last time I did this, but rather than a big complex and kind of convoluted spreadsheet, what we have for the people permission is tell me the person's login, tell me what profile you want to apply to them, such as change super user, and tell me if I'm doing it additively or in an overwrite fashion. So we'll say in this case we're going to do most of these additively, I believe. I'm going to go ahead and hit import and transport, and then we're going to go back and look at that Michael Parker's record. So Michael Parker is being given the permissions around being a change super user. So the way that this is really extra useful is we've had multiple real-life situations where we go ahead and give up people all the right permissions, but we find out kind of close to go live that we've forgotten a permission. So we need the ability to go back, and if we've got, say, if we have the definition of what it means to be a change super user not quite right, we need to be able to modify it. Okay, so if I refresh this screen right now, we should see multiples of these are now have support staff equals yes. And if I go back into this guy's entry, we'll see that with that click of that button, which if you've done this within the tool, that's a rather painful process. He now has a fixed license. He's in 3 separate support groups, and within those support groups, he has multiple functional roles. So that's great, but now let's say somebody came to me and says, uh-oh, we forgot a particular permission, and by the way, they need another functional role if they're going to be change super users. Well, we go to the profile, and we'll see now what the profile looks like. So this is the change super user profile. Super users get a fixed license. They get this set of permissions. But let's say we forgot a permission. Maybe we forgot something like, let's say we decided they need to be incident master. So go ahead and put incident master there. Then let's say they also need a particular functional role. let's say that we have forgotten to give them release approver. Maybe we decided to add in a release at the last minute. So we're going to go ahead and add that. So we've changed the function, or we've changed the people profile. We're going to go back to where we loaded the people data out and just reload it again. And so in this case, the people data is getting loaded. In this case, we went ahead and just updated everyone again. You might do a smaller subset the second time you did it. I'm going to go over. I'm going to close his people entry just to keep it clean. And I'm going to go and view his people entry again. And now we should see that he has incident master permissions, and he has an extra functional role that is release approver. So again, showing the iterative nature of the product and the way that you can run and rerun your different people data loads in order to get your data the way you want it, to get it pristine over time. Okay, so that's the people and the people permission support staff. I want to show you another view of what it looks like, and this is a useful view when we are doing our workshops and we're kind of trying to get across to our customers why it is that we continue to ask them, now I need this more information, or I need more, now this is how far in the process we are, we're going down the process. So let's say I'm going to show them what a particular person's record looks like. So this is the guy that we just looked at his record. And we're going to pull up a visual of what his record looks like. So he has a set of functional roles. He's in these support groups. He doesn't have any CIs associated with them, so maybe this is an area that still needs to get worked on, or maybe not. And these are the permissions that he has. So this is reflecting just the same kind of data that we just saw. It's just a different view. And sometimes this is a good view for end users to get the idea of why we have so many different aspects of the workshop that we need to cover. Another thing that we can look at in this is a support group. Oops, that's not right. So let's say I have a change management support group, and I want to look at what kinds of things I have done for my change management support group, and maybe what kinds of things I'm still doing requirements gathering on. So I have change management. I have incident templates for which I've authored. I do not have any change templates yet. I don't have any SR approval rules. I do have people in my support group. I have assignment rules associated with my support group. And I have what looks like work order templates. Yeah, work order templates. Looks like there's one there. So this is a view of the support group, similar to the way we looked at the view of the person. That's a little more visual that might be useful as you want to give while you're running your workshops. You want to give them a view into kind of how far along you are. We need to fill out all of these different little pieces of the spoke before we're done. Okay. Mentioned briefly, there are a couple of other things you can do. You have the ability to build what's called a job. So you can, let's say you want to pile several support group or several data links one on top of the other and run them sequentially. You might want to run one that has, say, for example, new podcast, new assignment data, and maybe some new people and people permissions, and run them one after the other. We can do that. The other thing, you have the ability to schedule data links to run at a particular time, or schedule jobs to run at a particular time. So you can schedule the data load to happen, overnight or something like that. And that's really it. I'm going to check my. Yeah. Okay, so that's it around the foundation and people permission. I'm going to just talk really briefly about CMDB data without really loading it. There are a collection of CMDB classes that we support. We do not support by any stretch all of the classes. Obviously, we don't support anybody's custom classes. But what we do is we're giving you the ability. We've got some of the primary classes out there. We do add classes with each release. And we do, from a services perspective, we can build custom classes for customers. But we also document what you need to do to extend this to work for the classes that you are using within your environment. So we have really detailed documentation about how to extend the framework to do that for you. So the use case, again, when we are not looking in the case of CMDB. BMC has a kind of a very large and complex ecosystem around CMDB that allows you to reconciliation and normalization and using Atrium Integrator and bringing data in from multiple data sources. And we're really not looking to in any way replicate that. We are looking for a way, if you have some subset of data that you kind of need to get in a quick and dirty way, you know what data set you want it to go into. It might be because you get a vendor report regularly that says a bunch of assets are end of life, or maybe it's because you have your vendor and you need to just pull in a big pile of desktop data for the customer that you're trying to roll out. It can be any one of these simpler use cases, but it can be used in conjunction, say, with reconciliation and the other things that BMC provides, or it could be used separately if you have a pretty simple CMDB implementation, but we're not really looking to be a replacement for that. So that's it about CMDB for this demo. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip over to the service request catalog, service catalog manager. So I said that this tool was kind of born out of the requirements that we had in our consulting days, particularly early consulting on ITSM 7. When SRM came out, we thought, well, if we can build, we have the infrastructure to take data from files and pull it into staging forms and from there push it into application forms, and wouldn't it be great if we could roll out a catalog doing that? So we're going to go and look. I just want to verify that the catalog I have right now, I'm looking at the catalog for effective technologies. I'm looking at all entries. If I do a search, this is just the online ones. There are no online ones. If I do a search all, we see these are some of the other language ones and the basic ones that are offline that come with the product. So essentially, I have no data in my catalog. And if I go over here and I maybe look, if I search right now, there's no services in the catalog. So it's entirely empty. I do not have anything in it. So we have all these different components of the SRM data. Of course, SRM data could also include things like prodcats, offcats, incident templates, task group templates, which you could load up using into the ITSM if I were under ITSM here. Once I've got all my basic things loaded up, the last bit that I'll load is the service request definitions. And I've preloaded the other stuff in the interest of time because this does take a while. I'm going to go ahead and load in my service request definitions. So if you have had a lot of experience building service request definitions within the tool, then you know that the whole approach can be pretty painful. And it can be really time-consuming to, first of all, build them initially, and then second of all, to get them from one environment to the next. If you build this approach where we're using our CSV files, it still has some of the same issues. You do have to build them from the bottom up. You do have to build a lot of components just to get an SRD built. You still have to build AOTs. You still have to build PDTs, etc. Once built, they're much easier to replicate, much easier to move from environment to environment. And the fact that you can manage them in CSV files just makes them much, much more reliable. So when I roll out, I have my CSV files and I point it at my QA environment and I load up on my service request definitions, and then I keep those same files and push them to my production environment where I also have transport. I'm going to have the SRDs that really do look and exactly the same as they did in QA, which is a huge plus. And it's also have a lot of, for example, mapping information and things like that that can be really a pain to build into your AOTs and your PDTs. It's much, much easier. If you need, say, for example, a set of fields mapped to the same questions, etc., if you need that across a lot of different service request definitions, you can just cut and paste. So this is likely going to time out. It's a pretty big collection of data. I think I have 20-something entries for the catalog. So it's still trying to load. It's probably going to time out. But let's go over and look at the Service Catalog Manager console. And I'm going to say I want to see the online ones again. And we can see one of the things the tool does is it will automatically turn depending on how you have your file set up, but it'll automatically put it online. So we can see now we're starting to get a catalog full of this data. These are all valid service request definitions. So we'll go back to the onboarding console, and sure enough, it did time out. which is not a surprise. But if I refresh here, I see that my SRDs are definitely getting in. Pretty much mostly are already in by now, I think. So again, if we saw in the catalog we have a bunch of SRDs now. If we go to request entry, and if I say I want to do a search, sure enough, I've got a bunch of catalog items. So this is pretty powerful. If you have had a lot of experience with SRM, I'm guessing that this is resonating with you. And if it hasn't, then go build a couple of SRDs, and then it will resonate with you. So we'll look. We're not going to obviously go and look at all of the SRDs, but let's drill down into one of them so that you can see that it's a real SRD. You can build as simple or as complex an SRD as you want here with whatever type of questions. And all of this stuff, the questions, the menu, all of this was built using the tool in CSV files. I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And then we'll go over here and work orders. Let's go to the work orders. I meant to get to the work order console. We're going to try to look at the work order that we just created. So what we'll see is that the work order we created actually has some data mapped down into the details field. So again, if you're familiar with tool, so here we have a project, you know that this indicates, if I go down and look into this, we map data into the details field. So this tells you that we use a work order template, and it tells you that we use the process mapping. And you can see here we mapped question and answer data into the notes field. So all of this is really just meant to illustrate that it's a fairly robust, not anything super complex, but it's a real SRD with real, you've done the real steps to build it, but you've just done them all using CSV files. So we got to that point where we could now build SRDs using the tool, and we wanted to take it a step further and make it easier for people to build SRDs without really having an underlying understanding of service request management, without knowing what a PDT was and the AOT was and all those things. So we then went a little further and we created something that we call Builder. Now the Quick Builder is going to let you, if you have built an SRD using transport, it will allow you to clone it. And what it's going to clone is the structure of the SRD. So we just saw this one. The structure of the SRD, what I mean by that is it's a service request in this case, and then it creates a work order using a work order template. So if we look at some other ones, this would be a service request. It's creating a change, not using a change template. There's this one is creating an incident, again, not using a template. This is a new hire one, so this one's a little more complex. It's got work order template, incident template, and then once these are done, it goes to another incident template. So you can see this is really what we call the structure of the SRD. So if I have one and I say I want to create a work order, I want to create a service request definition and I want it to generate a work order template. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this one. We're going to walk through the steps of how you might do that. So one thing you might do is you might just want to be cloning it for another company. If you're a managed service provider, you want to demo a particular service request definition, but you want to get the company name for whoever it is you're demoing it for. You might get right here, and then we'd go click, 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 and we would have the new service request definition would be rolled out in a matter of about 4 clicks. But let's assume we actually want to create a different service request definition. So here we have, this is showing me that I have a service request and I have a work order template. And those are the two things which I can customize to make my SRD look different from a project initiation request. So let's say So let's say I want to build this particular standing up a VM image for infrastructure purposes. So the description is going to change. You know, we would talk about something to do with VM image here. And the keywords would change. So this might say things like this. And you might change the instructions. You can change the category of the service request definition. You can change the service level. You can change the turnaround time. You can change, so maybe this is going to be 10 days. You can change the cost of it. So you can't change everything about the SRD, but there's a good collection of things that you can change. You can change the question. So let's say this is a project-related question. So that doesn't really make much sense in the context of a VM. So let's say we're going to just change this reference to VM server or something like that. Do that. And then, you know, you would probably go ahead and change some of these other ones as well. You might want to add a new question that says, let's see, what OS do you need? And you might say it's a text question, or you could give it a menu if you wanted. But let's just do that. Okay, so now we have a new question, and we might change the image. We can just pick something sort of random, just so we see that it's different. Okay, so we've now made the modifications that we can make to the service request definition. We also are going to want to update the work order template, because we don't want a work order template that's referring to project initiation requests. So this would be something about something like this. You can change the opcat of the work order, the prodcat, the assignment, the location. Those are things you can change about the work order. If I was doing a more complex one that had, say, for example, a change request and a couple task templates or a couple work order templates or multiple incident templates, this list right here would be longer. And whatever I went through and customized here would come out customized when I'm done with my cloning. So I go to the next page, and I have to do a three-step process to get my SRD out into the production or out into my environment. I'll take a minute. I'm going to actually create some staging entries. One question we always get is, if I have a catalog of some 50 or 100 SRDs that I built the hard way using the BMC point-and-click method, can I use this cloning tool on them? And the answer is no. You have to have built it within Transport in order to be able to clone it. And the other thing is, anything that you build in Transport going forward, you can clone. So if you clone something and you make these sort of changes to it, you now can make that clonable as well. And so the idea really is you're trying to get out your catalog. If you need a sort of unique service request definition that doesn't match one that's in your catalog already, somebody has to build that out in the spreadsheet, but from that point on, it can be cloned. Okay, so this all got processed. We did our three-step process if we close this. And I'm going to go back to request entry and just do VM. And I see I have my service request definition, stand up a VM image. Well, we saw that. Notice that the image has changed. The description is a little changed there. If I go down into it, we can see that we changed this question and we added this question. And if we were to go ahead, and you would see is similar to the one from which we cloned. There we go. Widget's not happy. Similar to the one that we cloned, it will create a work order. It will have created. If we were to drill down in here and look at the request details, we should be able to see that it created a work order. And so in the background, what happened there was when we did the cloning process. Let's see the process there. Let's close that. Go back here. So there's our new work order that got created. And if I were to drill down into that, we see that it still has the details. It cloned all of this from the old SRD. It does actually, all the questions are in here, but notice that we do have the new operating system related questions. So everything got mapped down in. So you can see that we kept a lot of the same things about the old one, and we created this one new in a way that was, it's really kind of unrecognizable as the same service request definition, but it's similar in structure. And in order to create it, all I needed to know is what are the questions I want to ask, and what do I need in terms of description and all that. I didn't have to understand what the AOT, PDT, and all those things are. All of those things, the work order template, the AOT, the PDT, and the SRD itself, all got cloned for you in the background as a result of using the Quick Builder. Okay, so that's really that makes up pretty much the bulk of what I wanted to show you today. If we go, I did want to go back and show one thing. Back on the onboarding console, as we're doing these tasks, if I were to pick an activity, say I'm importing my SRM data, and say I logged 6 hours against it, now when I go back to my projects console and I refresh this, I would expect the project that I'm working on is this one right here. So as I refresh my projects console, I see that this information goes up. So that's the tie back into the projects console that we would normally see. And again, that feature is optional. So if you want to have things you're doing over here reflected over in the projects console, then you would use these activities and then log your time, and you would define your activities library in a way that made perfect sense to you. And if you don't want to use that feature, then you can always just do everything. You don't even have to do it on a project basis. You can just do it as a maintenance. The last thing I guess I just want to put a plug in for is just to say that we as I said before, we do have the SLM aspect of the tool is coming. So you would be able to load that same sort of data in the same way we just did SRM data and how we showed doing foundation data. That's really it for the demo. Go ahead and go back to our slide deck. I think I just have one last slide. This is really, if you're interested in seeing a demo of the tool, you can contact Barbara, our sales director of sales, and I'll have her email up on the screen here in just a minute. If you're looking to try to make the case to your management that it's worth seeing a demo of it, we see these as the primary business drivers for why you need transport. It's going to reduce your time, effort, and cost of onboarding customers. It's going to make your data quality better and reduce manual errors. Of course, that's going to increase customer satisfaction. If you have existing resources, a pool of resources that are doing your data management tool, your data management process, then this is going to allow you to better leverage them. And then finally, your overall maintenance costs are going to go down. And so this is, let's see. Yeah. Okay, Stacy's actually reminding me right now, I completely forgot to mention that we're very excited about the fact that the transport product was voted Product of the Year, WWRUG2012. And speaking of RUG 12, and speaking of making business cases to your manager, if you didn't attend this RUG this past October, I really encourage you to try to get it into the budget for next October because it's a really great event. Aside from the fact that you could see transport up close and personal, that would be an added bonus, but it's just really good networking, really good way to further your remedy knowledge or your BMC in general knowledge. And so again, here's that Barbara's email is right there on the screen if you're interested in a more targeted demo, specifically for your company, or you're interested in a trial version of the product, contact her. And thanks for your time.